Windrush baby. Not enough has been said about Windrush babies. I came here to the city when I was 12 years old, and like many of you, I went to school here, grew up here, played cricket at Edgbaston, and therefore that makes me a homegrown Brummie. So it's good to be here. Now, my contribution to our conversation here is to say that, simply put, this is it, okay? This is the moment, this is it. And what do I mean by that? Our ancestors have been speaking about reparatory justice for 500 years. From the moment this insanity called slavery was put in place and our people were dragged across the Atlantic, from then we have had a stream of thought and practice that said this is wrong, this is criminal, and there has to be compensation for this. We have a long stream of this narrative running through the history of the Caribbean and Africa. I'm a historian of that process, and I can tell you that for 200 to 300, 400 years, each time an enslaved black person was freed, the first question they would ask, okay, well, for whatever reason I'm free, but where's my compensation? Now, the fundamental basis of that thought resides not only in the universal principles, but also in Western law, which is that everyone, every human, has a right to benefit from the fruits of their labor.
Amen.
And slavery has been defined as the appropriation of someone's labor and their alienation from the fruits of their labor. And that fundamentally, even if you forget what the legal aspects were all about, fundamentally that is what slavery is about. You work, the output of your labor and your production is the product of someone else. Now, each time we have had moments, individually and collectively, the issue of reparatory justice would arise. We have a pretty solid body of information now about the British emancipation and the European emancipation legislation process. When the parliaments of Europe were debating how they were going to give effect, how they were going to implement technically and legally an emancipation system. And they all agreed across Europe that the first principle to be established is that the enslavers will receive compensation and reparations, because the governments were taking away their private property. The British had 800,000 enslaved people across the Atlantic. And if you're going to free them, you have to pay compensation. And what kind of compensation? This is important from a legal perspective. The compensation which the British and other European parliaments agreed to pay was property compensation. In other words, the people who were going to be emancipated were, for the first time, classified in the British Parliament that they were not human. The black people were not human beings, they were property. And we were going to take away people's property, and therefore we had to pay them property compensation. Now, while that conversation was going on, the black community in Britain, and there was a significant free black community in this country, and they were saying to the Parliament, what about compensation for us? If you're going to compensate them, how about us? And that debate went on. So we have another moment in history where our people were asking about the language and the legal provision. Compensation, reparations. In the end, the British Parliament ruled that you, the black people, should be silent, you should be quiet, because the emancipation we are about to give you, that is your reparations. Take it, be quiet, and go away. But the conversation did not go away. It bubbled up again. So generation after generation, this issue of reparations kept emerging. But the difference between then and now is that then, every 20 or 30 years, the conversation would bubble up. Something terrible would happen. For example, what happened to George Floyd in Minneapolis. That public assassination murder, it so outraged the world that the conversation started again, justice, and it bubbled up, and then it bubbled down. And we have been going through that for 300 years. But something new has happened. Those of us who have participated in this round of the movement, and we can identify five waves in this movement. The rise and fall of the reparations conversation. But this eruption at this time comes at a moment when all of us around the world have realized that we need to convert these spasmodic, eruptive moments into a movement. Amen. That is really what has happened now, that we have imposed upon all of these eruptions and these periodic movements, we have imposed a leadership upon them, an organizational structure to bind them together, so that now we have a global movement that is looking like a tsunami. It's coming, it's here. So there's going to be no rise and fall of this conversation. This is it. We are now globally organized. There are reparatory justice movements all over the world, organizations. Wherever there have been African enslavement, there are now reparations movements. And they're now all linked and interlinked. And the CARICOM Reparations Commission has made it as one of its top priorities to connect and network all of these movements into one. And now we have a common global front, and we're working very closely with our colleagues in North America, Canada, USA, in Colombia, in Brazil, in Africa, wherever this crime against humanity has taken place. We are now building organizations, and we are into it. So, in effect then, your moment is now the global moment. If we decide to have a mass rally or conference in Ghana, we are going to be there. If it's going to be Mississippi, all of us are going to be there. So now we're going to have these global moments and movements. We're going to be speaking to the parliaments of all of these countries, civil societies, universities, churches, trade unions. Now we are speaking grassroots to everyone. Wonderful. So I am here with my colleagues as part of providing the advocacy for this moment, so that we all know what we're in. And we're in this together, and there's no going back.
That's right.
There's no going back. And every day we're going to hear arguments as to why reparatory justice should not be an official policy of those countries that have been criminally enriched in enslavement and colonization. And they will create opposing arguments. They will invent them, they will manufacture them. No matter how absurd they sound, they will still say them. But we have an answer for each and every one.
Right.
Because we have the legal firepower, we have the historical data, we have the philosophical thinking, we have the political strategies, we have the religious and theological explanations. No matter how they come at us, we have every argument to say, my brother and sister, You need to think about what you've just said.
It's just a shame.
Okay? Because this is a moment of readiness. This is a moment where things will happen. And I will end by making this observation. It is no different. It is no different from the independence moment of all of us who have been colonized.
Mm-hmm.
It's no different from that.
Yes.
In the Caribbean, in the 1930s, all of our people rose up against colonization.
That's right.
Belize, then St. Kitts, then Antigua, then Trinidad, Barbados, then Trinidad, back up to Jamaica. All of our society said no to colonization. We are now ready for independence.
That's right.
And then our cousins over in India said, well,
Yes.
if the West Indians, if the West Indians are calling for an end to colonization, how about us East Indians?
Yes.
And Mahatma Gandhi said, time out. 1940s, it's over. Mahatma Gandhi walked down to the British governor and said to the governor, thank you, English people, for being here for the last 200 years. It's time to go home now. And the governor said, Mr. Gandhi, we are not ready to go home.
That's right.
And when he looked behind Mr. Gandhi, he saw 1 million Indians. And they knew, 1947, they knew it was time to go home. And they packed up and they came back to Britain, and India became independent.
Wonderful.
And then the Africans said, well, okay, if the West Indians are going to do this, and then the Indians are going to do it, how with us? And Kwame Nkrumah says it's time for Ghana to become independent and lead the trail. All of Africa must now become independent. So where did it start? This whole thing about independence, it started in the West Indies, and then the East Indies, and then Africa. And then at that moment, the West Indians came back and finished it off. Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, Guyana, one by one. And then within 20 years, the empire had fallen.
Wow.
Within 20 years, it had fallen. Now, remember this, after the war, Britain was getting ready for another 100 years of colonization. Having fought the Nazis and won, they were getting ready here for another 100 years of colonization. But it wasn't to be, because we the people put an end to it.
That's right.
We the people put an end to their aspirations for another 100 years of colonization. They had no intentions of leaving India or the West Indies or Africa. It was settling down for another 100 years. And within 20 years, it was all over. So we are here now with the final stage of this conversation. Final stage. Reparative justice is the last and final stage.
Yes.
And this is where we are now. We're all in agreement. We just came back from Addis in Ethiopia, where the African governments and the Caribbean governments signed a treaty that we are going to speak with one voice on reparative justice from here on. And how magnificent it was to be in Addis, in the Nelson Mandela's conference room in Ethiopia, with all the African presidents and Caribbean presidents and all speaking from one place. From now on in, Africa and the Caribbean will be speaking with one voice.
Amen.
So this is it. So prepare yourselves, my friends. This is it. We are going to do this. And many people have said, okay, it might happen, but not in our lifetime. Fine. If you had asked the enslaved people in the Caribbean in 1830, if you had asked those 600,000 enslaved people in the West Indies, do you think you will see emancipation in your lifetime? They all would have said no, because they had been fighting and fighting for 300 years. And even then, they believed probably not. And then something remarkable happened. A young man by the name of Samshar
Yes.
In 1831, organized an island-wide rebellion
Yeah.
in Britain's largest colony.
Yeah.
300,000 enslaved people.
Yes.
And they brought it to its knees.
Mm-hmm.
And then the British government said in their own parliament, the only way we can hold on to slavery, the only way we can hold on to it going forward, is with a massive, massive investment in military suppression. Do we want to spend that kind of money to keep those 600,000 enslaved people in slavery? And even if you spend that kind of money in soldiers and equipment in armies and garrisons, they're still going to rebel against it because they have decided enough was enough. And so here we are. Do you believe that you will see reparatory justice from these European governments in your lifetime?
Yes.
Same question.
Yes.
Some of you might say maybe not. But believe it. The reason I study history at university, well, the main reason, well, one of the reasons was to tell my children and grandchildren stories. Okay, but that's in the domestic space. Put your grandkids on your knee and tell them once upon a time and so on. And if you have some history in your head, you can tell some real good history stories. But it was to understand these patterns and these processes and see this logic and how you can connect the dots so that you can see a pattern evolving. And that's what we have been doing. So, welcome friends. Welcome to the vanguard of it. And it's wonderful to be here. Back in one of the towns that I have been very fond of, Birmingham wasn't good to us when we first came. It wasn't good to us. It wasn't good to our parents who were in rush here. But some of us survived it. And I can say to you, I see myself as a survivor of that reality that we came here in the 60s and found. And I was saying to my friends a few days ago, you know, when I arrived here at the age of 12 and was told that our task was to follow our parents into the factories. Our mothers were cleaning the hospitals. They were working in the sanitary professions. Our fathers were working in the factories. And we, the children, they didn't want us, you know, because we were an inconvenience. They wanted our parents to labor, but they didn't want the children. So when we came, when our parents took the decision to go and bring their children, understand this, it was like slavery all over again. One of the features of emancipation was there was a massive movement of people from island to island. Many of my Jamaican friends don't know that 8,000 Barbados ex-slaves went to Jamaica. This packed them and went to Jamaica. And why? They went to Guyana. They went looking for their children.
Sad.
They went to look for their children that were sold all over the Caribbean. They went in search of them. And there was a tremendous amount of movement. So when our parents came here without their children, it was only a matter of time before they sent for their children. So we, the kids, came over, but we were told, stand behind your parents, walk into the factories behind them. That was the expectation. But some of us revolted against that.
As we do.
We revolted. And the revolt has brought us all here right now, today. So this is it. We're not going back. This is the global struggle in action. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is it, huh? But we have some words for that. Repeat after me. Tu teshinda.
Tu teshinda.
Two to Shinda.
To Tashenda,
We will win.
we will win.
Do you know Britain invaded 173 of the 192 countries in the United Nations today? That's Britain. Do you know 46,000 payments were made to the church, to parliamentarians at emancipation? Some women, some children had slaves. 46,000 Britons. But that's history. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Hillary Brown, one Hillary to the next Hillary, to speak to you about CARICOM. And she should know a lot about it because she's in the Secretariat. And I'd like you to put your hands to her because she ran CARIFESTA. 35 countries just last August.
Thank you. Good evening, brothers and sisters. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah.
No? Can't hear me at the back? Is that better? No, I don't think this mic. I don't think this mic is.
It was from long time.
This one sounds live. Thank you. Yes, much better. Greetings.
Greeting.
My brother Eric greeted you with
Tuta Shinda.
Tutashinda. Now I will greet you with Bayete.
Bayete.
Bayete, which is the Zulu royal greeting. It's wonderful to be here. It's actually the first time I've ever visited Birmingham. So it's great to be in the heartbeat of this country. And to just say some very brief words on CARICOM. Whenever people tell me that they don't know what CARICOM is, sometimes I interview the immigration officers when I land in the US. They say, where you work? I say, I work at CARICOM. I said, do you know what that is? And they're like, no, and then they get a little bit of education right there while they're stamping my passport. So, and from I was an undergraduate student, I was introduced to the region, and I knew I always had to work with CARICOM. I moved to Guyana, I thought, for 4 years, and 20 years later, I am still there. So, and whereas, you know, if you go online and you do research on CARICOM, you're going to see things. It's a regional integration movement. It's the oldest regional surviving integration movement, that it was established by the Treaty of Chaguaramas in 1973, that we have various pillars of cooperation, trade and economic integration, coordinating our foreign policy, and collaborating in human and social development, which is the section I work in, with gender and culture and education and health. And then you will also see things like we have 15 full member states, which includes Haiti and Suriname, and we have now 6 associate members, 7-ish. Yeah, Curacao has joined. Curacao being Jamaica, wow. And Martinique will soon become. So we are multicultural and multilingual. But I think that what you would miss in what you see online is that CARICOM really is about family and community. It is because of those historical and cultural links that Professor Beckles just spoke to, that this is what makes us a natural organization, natural organic links, and which is also why it became natural that we would then, as CARICOM, lead this global movement in saying, you sold us, you stole us, you owe us reparations now. It makes sense, because of that common historical and cultural bonds that we have, and that common sense and of aspirations, the experience of colonization and the continuing harm and the continuing development challenges that we face together. But whenever one of us is in trouble, we all come together.
Yes.
Right here on this
Yes.
podium, we have Barbados. I'm originally from Jamaica. Guyana is here, Barbados again, Grenada, the Bahamas. So it is about family, and that has been my experience. And also, CARICOM, what we say in Jamaica, we little but we tell. Little but we tell, we always punch above our weight. It is CARICOM that has led the global movement on non-communicable diseases. CARICOM has been one of the loudest voices on climate change and climate justice. CARICOM is one of the voices now on the Bridgetown Initiative and transforming the injustice of the current world economy. And guess who is one of the loudest voices on reparative justice? It is CARICOM. So I think we need to appreciate that it goes beyond what you might see online, what you might be taught in school, and to realize that we are a body of people who see ourselves as having a common destiny, as having a common history, and who are working together to create what we would call a community for all. So that's CARICOM 101 in 5 minutes. Thank you. It's a joy to be here.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Let me acknowledge Malik. Can you raise your hand? He's one of the warriors in reparations. Let me now have the privilege of asking Ambassador David Comstone to tell you about the CARICOM Reparations architecture.
Thank you, Eric. Good evening,
Good evening.
brothers and sisters. Not working again? Shake it. Shake it. Hello. I could talk without the mic. I stand. I could project my voice. Just to clarify something that Hillary and I might have confused you all about when we said there's 7-ish associate members. So CARICOM has the 15 full members, which are mainly all independent countries. Montserrat is an enigma, special case because of the volcano and all of that. But all the English-speaking, Jamaica, Barbados, Guyana, plus Haiti, French-speaking, and Suriname, Dutch-speaking. But then the associate members are basically colonial territories. So 5 remaining British colonies in the Caribbean: Bermuda, British Virgin Islands, Anguilla, Turks and Caicos, Cayman Islands, and then we have Curacao, which is a Dutch colony, and Martinique was admitted into membership this year. We agreed to admit them, but there's still one technicality that they have to satisfy, and that's why we said 7-ish. We still have to get Martinique. But in terms of the CARICOM reparations infrastructure, well, you know, it was in 2013 that CARICOM heads of government decided that we were going to be pursuing this reparations claim against all of the European countries that were involved in the genocide of the indigenous people of the Caribbean and African enslavement. So we began with 6: Britain, Spain, Portugal, France, Holland, and Denmark. And we have since increased that to 10. We have since added Germany, Switzerland, Sweden, and Norway. But we began with 6, and we met in Kingstown, St. Vincent in September of 2013. Sir Hillary Beckles presided over that session, where he declared that the 21st century would be the century of reparative justice, and that we were embarking on a journey of reparative justice.
Right.
And we set up the infrastructure. We said every full member state of CARICOM, the government must establish a national reparations committee or task force. Then we said the chairperson of every national task force or committee, we would bring the chairpersons together along with Sir Hillary Beckles in the CARICOM Reparations Commission, a regional body. And that regional body would have the mandate and the responsibility for crafting and taking forward the reparations campaign. However, there would be a structure above that regional CARICOM Reparations Commission that would give it oversight and political guidance. And that is, we would establish a prime ministerial subcommittee on reparations. That is a committee of 6 prime ministers or presidents chaired by Barbados. So whoever is the prime minister of Barbados chairs that prime ministerial subcommittee. So at present, Prime Minister Mia Motley is the chair of the prime ministerial subcommittee. The CARICOM Reparations Commission, very quickly, by 2014, had developed their 10-point reparative justice plan, or 10, we talk about a plan, it's really 10 demands, where we break down what we mean by reparations, the demands that we are making, and we begin by demanding an official, legal, historical apology. And when we say an historical, legal apology, we don't mean like if I pass and I mash Hillary's toys. Hillary, sorry. No, we don't mean that. We mean something in international law.
Yes.
Where it is specified the damage that you did,
Yes.
the historical data pinning down that damage, how you damaged people, the crime you committed, and it's an apology that must be made at the very highest level of the national government, and so it resonates in international law.
Yes.
Apology. Basically, our approach to reparations is that we want to address the historical legacies of underdevelopment that are rooted in those centuries of enslavement, colonization, those crimes against humanity, those genocides that were committed during that period of time. So we don't see reparations in terms of like an individual money payment, as you tend to find that kind of discourse in the United States of America, for example, where people are expecting a check. We see it more in terms of addressing the historical legacies of underdevelopment, how they plundered our people, they plundered our nations and our societies. As Walter Rodney said, how Europe underdeveloped Africa. They purchased their development at the price of our systematic underdevelopment. And the reparations campaign is to address and redress that. We have also established at the University of the West Indies Mona campus, CARICOM Reparations Research Institute, that works with the CRC, the CARICOM Reparations Commission, that helps to do historical research and public education pertaining to reparations. The final thing I would say is that Sir Hillary said this is it, and why this is it is because we are now going to deploy all of the weapons at our disposal. We are going to deploy them all. The diplomatic weapons, the political weapons, the weapons, the political education, the nurturing of global public opinion, the harnessing of allies, we are now going to step up. We are going to step up in a very fundamental way in that global reparations movement that Sir Hillary spoke about. And as we get into the question and answer session, we can look more closely at some of those weapons and strategies that we are now poised to deploy in a much more powerful way than we have done in the past. Thank you.
Thank you.
I really cannot avoid but to say this. The first time I went to see Bob Marley, he was due on stage at midnight. He came on at 5 a.m. because the system was not working.
Oh.
And Bob came on and he said, have you all noticed that every time poor people get together to have a nice time, the sound man mess up things?
Babylon system.
Thank you. I'd now like to ask Dr. Nyambi Dean Campbell to share more details about our 10-point plan. She's been hoarse all week, so.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Again, my name is Dr. Nyambi Hall Campbell Dean. I'm the chair of the Bahamas National Reparations Committee. And in my daytime, my day job, I am a professor of psychology at the University of the Bahamas. And so with that, I would like to see how many students are in here tonight. Can you just raise your hand? Students, all right, that's what's up. And so I say that because while this is it, this is also yours. This movement is yours. And so we need you to leave from here tonight and tell all of your colleagues, your students, listen, y'all miss it. You know, y'all missed it, y'all should have been there. Because this is the movement of the 21st century, and this is the movement that's going to get us to where we need to be as people, right? So it is lovely to see all of your faces in here tonight, but we really need to get our young people involved. We really need to get our young people on board and understand what this reparations movement is all about. And so with that, I will just also follow up a little bit on what Ambassador Commissar was stating about our 10-point plan. You know, whenever I travel, my people are like, oh, Ambi, you going to get our money? I'm like, yeah. You know, for reparations, I'm going to get the money. But we do have a developmental model of reparations, right? So there's not a check. And so one of the other things that we want to note is that our 10-point plan is under revision. And so you should see the new model of the 10-point plan coming out very soon. We've updated it and we've added to it so that it is more of a manifesto of reparations, and just rather than just a plan. We've also added some specific details in regards to gender, right? And the ways that enslavement impacted women specifically, right? Noting that this was the first time that your slave status was based on your mother's slave status, right? So if your mommy was a slave, boom, you were a slave. So these are some of the things that we are going to add to the 10-point plan and just fill it up a bit. And we hope that you remain engaged and follow us as we make these changes. Thank you.
So the first point is the apology. The second point, repatriation and resettlement for Rastafari. Any Rastafari here? That's the second point. Well, we have another chair of the Grenada Reparations Committee, and he has a particular experience with one of the British families. So he will share with you who supports the mandate and give you his experience. And this is Mr. R.E. Gill, a lawyer. So that's like a lawyer. everybody, I'm an engineer, doctor, very well balanced.
Thank you very much, Eric. And it's always a pleasure to be here. And maybe a good starting off point would be to pay homage to the Rastafarians. Professor Beckles spoke about the highs and the lows and the peaks and the troughs in the reparation movement. And one people that never wavered, one people that never moved, that never slacked off was the Rastafarians. And they kept going. Despite persecution, despite being laughed at, being scoffed at, the Rastafarian kept the flame of reparations alight. And we are eternally grateful for the efforts of the Rastafarian movement, not just in the Caribbean, but globally, in keeping African and Black consciousness and the issues of reparation alive. Because I can say to you that when Professor Beckles reignited, rejuvenated through the heads of government in 2013 thereabouts, this issue of reparations, there were a lot of sniffles throughout the region, a lot of cynics among our own people who said, you know, where these fellas going with this thing again? These bright fellas, I mean, you know, they're wasting their brain, you know. Why are they going behind these reparations? Because you will recall and you will remember that these reparations, Marcus Garvey spoke about it. All of our top intellectuals and scholars throughout the region spoke about this issue of the subject of reparations. And as such, in 2013, when the CARICOM set up the CARICOM Reparations Commission to advise governments on how we can go about this, the target, as Ambassador Commission spoke about, was the governments throughout the region, throughout the world, sorry. Those 6 major governments, those 6 major players in the transatlantic slave trade, indigenous genocide, and slavery. And let us not for 1 minute, let us forget the first settlers and the first peoples of the Caribbean. We refer to them as the Kalinagos, the Arawaks, the Tainos, and so.
That's right.
Now, when this initiative started, the focus was to look at governments. And when the advocacy and the campaign really took off, we in the Caribbean noticed that families were coming forward. Like the Trevelyan family in Grenada that owned slaves. The Gladstone family, the other prime minister here in Britain who directly benefited his family from plantations and slaves in the Caribbean, in particular Guyana and Jamaica. Then we saw the Guardian newspaper, universities, the Church of England, the Bank of England that owned 599 slaves and 3 plantations in Grenada. So that not only governments, but institutions and families, just about 2 months ago, it became official that the royal family had benefited directly from slave ownership in Grenada. So that not only governments, but we see institutions in England and throughout Europe that have benefited directly from those crimes against humanity. And that, in a sense, has strengthened our resolve with regards to this reparative movement. So, friends, our task here is to invite you, if you're not yet part of this movement, if you're not yet formally part of this struggle. We are here in the United Kingdom. We have met with universities, we have met with the press, we have met with grassroots organizations, and we are here in Birmingham. So that we expect that at some level, persons who are listening to us this evening will join some formal structure to assist with the work of reparative justice. And I want to thank you very much for coming out and to be part of this meeting this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll have an opportunity later to ask questions. I'd like to acknowledge Ms. Mandisa Baptiste, who's from Guyana. She's part of the Guyana Reparations Committee. There is an also. Sir Hillary, can you speak on the implications for the Caribbean diaspora in the UK and globally with this movement?
Okay. maybe I should begin by also making my reference to the Rastafari as the ancestral home of much of what we are speaking about.
That's right.
When I left Birmingham back in the early 80s, I went straight to Jamaica. And when I got to Jamaica, the Marcus Garvey people asked me if I could give a small talk on reparations, and I agreed, 1981. And the lecture was very heavily advertised. When I turned up to give the lecture, there were only 11 people. And all 11 of them were Rastafari. Because on the campus, in Jamaica, nobody wanted to hear a lecture on reparations. The Rastafari came. And one of them stood up and said, "Don't worry about the small crowd. Talk, you talk." And I had the privilege, I have not had it since, I had the privilege of speaking for 3 hours to 12 people. But this is a movement that is connecting to all people in the world who have suffered exploitation. Not only black people. As we heard, the British colonized 80% of the world, invaded, plundered their resources, stole their people, stole their cultural artifacts, imposed their language, and all of these things they did. And they all created this global network of horror.
Yes, horror.
I was very impressed when the Indian Parliament a few years ago said, what the British did to Africa, we were just behind Africa. We were next in line to Africa, to what they did to us in India, destroying our technology, our factories, our agriculture, creating famine in the Bengal, millions of people starving to death. It was horrendous what they did in India. But the Indian government said they owe us reparations, but they are too poor to pay it. Because, see, that is the irony. They owe us reparations as well, but we're not going to ask for it. Because we are now richer than them.
That's right.
So we're not going to ask them for it. But they owe the African people and the Caribbean. That's what they said. They owe the African people and the Caribbean people reparations. Because they are at a different stage in their economic development. In Latin America, David has spent a lot of his time in Colombia and Brazil and speaking to all of the African communities, the indigenous people across Latin America. Yes, I've spent the last 30 years all over Africa, north, east, south, west, central, giving hundreds of presentations of this kind on reparatory justice. And it was amazing, just last week, who did we host in Barbados? The King of Ghana, the Asantehene, Atumfo, Osei II, who came to the Caribbean to say that we, the people of Africa, Ghana, started the independence process. He's the King of Ghana, and he's come to the Caribbean to say, we are one people, we are one people, and this is something we all have to do together, together. Now, we hear that. We also hear that at the United Nations. This is where we have gone. I have had the pleasure on 2 occasions speaking to the General Assembly of the United Nations on the question of reparatory justice. The vast majority of countries in the world have supported the resolution that those who committed this crime against the black people of the world must pay reparatory justice. That's the United Nations. So it has already gone there. and there is global solidarity. David mentioned also Switzerland. Switzerland was not originally in our focus when we were looking at the slave system. But we now have colleagues at the university in Geneva and other parts, and they're saying to us, no, we have done the research. The banks in Switzerland that are well known, globally respected, most of these financial institutions were involved in one way or another in the financing of slavery. So you must add Switzerland to your list. And these are Swiss scholars who are bringing the information to us. So all over the world, people are coming out and they are saying, we want to be a part of this movement. We received support from the people of China who have said, listen, and the Chinese policy is very clear. What has been done to Africa and its people has never before happened in human development. And because we understand what they have done to Africa, we are creating a policy framework that will say, in the last 500 years, they have ravished Africa and its people of its resources, human and material. But the history will show in 500 years' time, and this is how the Chinese think. The Chinese don't think in 5-year plans. The Chinese have a 200-year plan and 400-year plan. When the history is written in 500 years' time, it will show that we, the people of China, have turned Africa around and put it back up so it can move forward. It can move forward. And in all of my trips to China to speak about these matters, there is a tremendous sense that China, India, Africa are some of the old civilizations of the world, and in the future they must lead. Thus, the commitment to putting Africa back on its feet. Now, you cannot get a more intense global conversation than that. And of course, we have not forgotten the indigenous people. The indigenous peoples who were colonized, murdered, and butchered.
Yes.
Millions of people in North America were destroyed. In the Caribbean, it's the same thing. You know, we are now trying to get our children to understand. If you take Barbados, for example, the British arrived in Barbados in 1625. They surveyed the island. They surveyed it. They wrote back to King James. Your Royal Highness, we have arrived at the island. The Portuguese call it Los Barbudos. And we have arrived here. We have surveyed the island. And Your Royal Highness, it is the perfect place to begin because there are no people. There are no people on the island. It's an empty island. It's the only empty island that they're found anywhere in the Caribbean. However, Your Majesty, there are houses everywhere. You see, why are there houses everywhere and no people? Because the Spanish would invade Barbados, capture the native people, and take them off to Mexico as slaves to work in the mines. The Portuguese will come up from Brazil, raid the island, capture the local people, take them off to Brazil to work on the sugar plantations as slaves. And those who survive those genocidal raids, those who survived, got on their canoes and fled to St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Dominica, Guyana. They fled to the neighboring places where they had historical connections. But here was an empty island. The first genocide that we can speak of. An entire population wiped out. Now we have to connect all of those dots. So now the indigenous people are finding their way, and we in this movement are bringing them back on. And I can share with you another example of how this works. I went to Dominica many years ago when I was working at the Barbados campus. I went to Dominica and I went to the reservation. And I saw these indigenous people huddled together in what looks to me like a concentration camp. But they're huddled together in the forest up there. And we felt responsibility. We, the black people, felt responsibility for those people. And we arranged a pipeline where some of the children would go to high school, and from high school they would come to the university. And the university started by offering 10 scholarships every year. 10 scholarships to an indigenous student. And we pulled some of those young people out of the reservation and brought them to the university. You know, I was shocked by what happened when the first 10 of them arrived in Barbados on the campus. The black students had never met an indigenous person before. And because they all studied history out of European books, they were told when they were in primary school that the Caribs were cannibals, they would eat people. And they were brainwashed, all of us were brainwashed, that these indigenous people were cannibals. And when the indigenous students came on the campus, the black students were petrified. They were looking, oh, the professor bring these people on campus? Because that was a moment of truth. And of course they settled down and they got to know them, and they realized the connectivity. And these students became the heroes of the student population, teaching the black students languages, teaching them art and culture, philosophy and religion, bringing a whole body of knowledge that the Europeans had suppressed and making it available. They even tried to teach me how to dance. They even tried, you know, you're talking about CARICOM. When I was a young man in this country at university and so on, yes, they used to tell me, the black students would say, Hillary, you dance like you're a child. Because they couldn't figure out how I could not get my legs to go up. But there was this Jamaican girl who said, Hillary, I'm going to teach you to dance. Now listen, follow me. 1, 2, 1, 2, it's easy. And I say, okay, you are hearing 1, 2. But what I'm hearing is 1, 1.5. It's 3.5 that's messing up. It's 0.5 that's messing up my groove, you understand? But okay, so we now have this global movement where all the people of the world who have been colonized, who have been plundered and so on, all of these movements for justice are coming together under this global reparations movement, because they all have their story to tell about what has happened to them. And they're all having a sympathy and an empathy with what has happened to black people in the last 500 years. There's an empathy and a sympathy. So we're building a movement across the world of people who believe in justice, who believe in democracy, who believe that those who have had their resources stolen and plundered, there must be justice. And that is why this movement is spreading like wildfire across the world. And this is the movement that will change the world. It will bring back compassion. It will bring back human dignity and respect for the human being.
Amen.
It will bring it back. And that's why we believe in it. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. I'll now turn it over to our wonderful host, Tutushinda.
Thank you, colleagues. Right. So just briefly before we move on, hello everyone. Just a reminder, if you could use the QR code to ask your questions. I've already got quite a few great questions, so we're going to ask those shortly. But you can use the QR code and type out a question. You can ask a question anonymously if you feel that you have to do that. You can also let us know who you are. James and I are going to just briefly bring it home to the UK and have a conversation about that, and then we'll open the floor for questions. And before we do that, I just have to share, this is a very personal, emotional, and spiritual moment for me. So I've written this down so that I don't go off script. I stand before you this evening, not as a dean in the UK university, probably the best to ever do it, not as a representative of the Vice-Chancellor's office. I literally have to say that. These are my academic views, and these views do not represent the views of the university. And I'm not even really standing here as an academic or an activist. I stand here as a little Trinidadian. Born to two Trinidadian immigrants who came to this country in hopes of a better life. My parents are here for the first time. I've been working at BCU for 4 years, and for the first time my whole family is here to witness this, because this is a very important moment. And my godson's here. My mom just left with the baby. So I was born to two Trinis. I'm a Trini girl, but I learned about my heritage too late in life. And I wrote this down when I was asked by a colleague to present today, because it came to me. As I said, it's emotional. I stand here as a Trini girl who learned her sense of justice on the streets of Port of Spain when she fell in love with her home, her heritage, too late in life. This Trini girl is honoured to stand before you, CARICOM. You represent the realisation of a dream. Dr. Eric Williams, the first Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, he wrote a 15-year draft plan for education, and I studied that when I was in school. He envisioned an education that was for every Trini, who would not be considered intellectual or intelligent enough to go to the colonial universities. He envisioned an education that enabled social mobility. He envisioned an education that would have enabled my parents to start a life in the UK. So this Trini girl is humbled to stand before you all today. Thank you. My colleague James and I are going to briefly talk to you about the state and the current situation in the UK. And so we're just going to be very brief, and then we'll open the floor for questions. So we're just going to talk to you a little bit about where we are in the UK and the reparative justice mandate. We're going to talk a bit about how we engage and ask some questions, and there'll be more questions after, of course. Okay?
Thanks, Melanie. You've made it a tough act to follow. For those of you who don't know me, I know some of you know me. I used to work at Birmingham City University. I no longer do. I'm James Boston. I'm the founder of the Association of Former British Colonies. Our mission is to examine the legacies of British colonisation with a view to informing both UK and global reparations policy, but also policy around decolonisation as well, specifically speaking to the matter of independence for British overseas territories. And we have colleagues from the British Virgin Islands, for example, on our board. A bit about myself, my family Jamaican, my grandmother came from, my grandparents came from St. Thomas in the 1950s. 3 generations later, here I am. For me, this comes from, it's personal as well. I remember as a young child going to Jamaica and seeing where my family comes from. I didn't know my history at that point. When I went back and knew my history, the hair stand up kind of back on my neck, because I realised, this was the coffee plantation that my ancestors worked on. My uncle would tell me bits about the history, and I started to connect the dots. And I've been to Jamaica 4 times, and each time I go back, knowing more about my history, it gets more emotional and more spiritual every time. So for me, similarly to Melanie, CARICOM is the embodiment of what I believe to be our best chance of achieving reparations, and that's why I wanted to bring you to Birmingham, and that's why I pledge my support in doing whatever we can to help make that happen. So what I'm going to try and do, I'm going to give an overview of the reparations movement and advocacy in the UK, and the pattern I notice is there's kind of a three-way split. You have examples of reparations, for example, the repair campaign, which is very much aligned to the 10-point plan that you discussed. There are other examples of reparations advocacy where it's not really aligned to the 10-point plan. So for example, there was a petition that took place in 2020 that petitioned the UK government for reparations. But when you read the description, they didn't really mention CARICOM, and they didn't mention anything about the 10-point plan specifically. And the UK government responded to that by saying they're not paying any money. It is also important to note that there are
forms of anti-reparations campaigns that take place in the UK. And this is really being propelled by the far-right media, who often portray reparations as just a payoff for slavery, and often demonize it with propaganda.